Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Prince Namor, The Savage Submariner, issue number 67, dated November 1973. We see the cover here. This was always kind of an important cover to me. Honestly, I think in terms of collectibles, it really isn't. Though I think a lot of fans have kind of very positive memories of this outfit. It looks like kind of a spandex design here, and we see Namor. He's dressed. He's fully dressed, in these blue duds, making it clear that he has a new costume. Although the masthead here still has him with the green trunks on. We see there's a great deal of drama. Namor is kind of like showing off this new outfit here as he's declaring war on the human race. We can see Atlantis is the citizens of Atlantis are being affected by some form of gas. So Namor wants to declare global war on the human race. However, Triton is swimming around saying, "No, you can't, because I'm Triton." Triton really takes it on the chin in this issue in terms of who he thinks he is and how other people perceive him. This is the fish guy. So, and he's also one of the main reasons why I don't really like the Inhumans. We also see there's also a lot going on in terms of special guests. We see that the then Fantastic Four will be showing up. Although at this point, Sue had left Reed again. So the female lead for the Fantastic Four at this point was Medusa, who I guess was on loan from the Inhumans. Anyway, I'm going to take a look. This is kind of an interesting cover. I thought this was an interesting story. It's also a comic I remember from my childhood. My cousin had bought it when it came out. So the title of the issue is Sea Winds of Change. And we're going to take a look at the creative team. There's a lot going on with the creative team, and there's actually a long explanation of what is going on with the direction of this comic. Before I get to the actual creative team, it turns out that there's a dedication, and they're dedicating this issue to the late Bill Everett. And Bill Everett was the man who created the Submariner. And for a lot of years, he was the man who was sort of in charge of the direction of the comic. I remember reading some of his issues when it was like in the 40s and 50s. Not the era, the issue range. And I always found the problems that the Submariner was dealing with kind of interesting, to be honest. But there was actually a big shakeup with the creative team when Bill Everett had passed. They mentioned he had been in comics for 34 years at that point. And I think comics were about 34 years at this point. The writer is Steve Gerber. The art is by Don Heck, and it does show. And we see the inker is Frank Boyle. I'm not familiar with him. And the editor is Roy Thomas. So we see the Submariner here. He's in the ocean. He's being surrounded by orcas. Well, what we're told are orcas, killer whales. They actually look like really big eels. These are very badly drawn orcas here. And based on TikTok videos, I would actually probably favor the orcas at this point. They would be a formidable opponent for Namor. Although orcas do have one kind of glaring weakness, is that they don't really have great teeth. I think they only get one set of teeth as an adult, and if they break off one, it's tough for them. So, and of course, there's no dentistry under the sea. So they tend to be kind of careful about what they bite into. Otherwise, orcas are definitely the apex predator of the ocean. And these orcas, they're being controlled by the villain here, and he's called Orca, and he's working in tandem with the she-beast. The direction that this comic takes is very odd in terms of what it does. But they are preparing the reader that there are going to be changes in the storylines. But nevertheless, Namor has to let this storyline play out right now. He's being encircled by the orcas. He's not sure what he can do. He feels that in his weakened state, the whales probably have the advantage. So rather than dealing with the whales directly, he actually devises an escape. And he sort of does that Superman move where he just spins his body around and is able to sort of turn himself into a drill. So Submariner here is drilling through some of this coral reef here to sort of escape the orcas. This is taxing Namor at this point, although he's still holding up pretty well. He's not now at this point. He doesn't know whether he'll break out of this coral reef or not. However, he does, and he's able to swim off. However, as he's swimming to escape the orcas, he runs into a cargo ship. And this is presenting a problem with Namor because he just burst out of this coral area, and he didn't see this ship coming in time, and he's basically heading toward it, and he's heading toward the bulkheads. The problem here is that this particular ship, which at this point is kind of stranded and stuck, they're carrying nerve gas. So Namor is sort of, not only is he heading on a direct course with the ship, he's going to hit the nerve gas canisters that the ship is freighting. And Namor immediately hits the ship, and this sort of basically loosens the cargo of what it's holding here, which is nerve gas. Before I get back to the story, I'm going to take a look at this one ad. It's by a company. I remember buying comic books with this ad. This is my all-time favorite comic book ad. These are basically iron-ons, but you get a great choice of iron-ons here. So anyway, and then we see the famous Charles Atlas ad with with kind of the wimpy guy getting kicked in the face with sand, and then he becomes the bully and returns to the beach. Same way we see Namor. He's already made contact with the ship. It explodes or implodes. We see Namor's kind of thrown out of the blast area. We also see that the nerve gas is also being released. So then Namor is kind of thrown out of the sea, and he's heading toward the surface area. And it turns out that there's an island where there's I don't know what's going on. It looks like oil work. These guys might be building an oil rig, and they come across the Submariner. But it turns out that there's one superpowered person with these oil workers, and it's Triton. And apparently what happened is that they had sent a distress call to the Fantastic Four. The FF evaluated the distress call. They decided that it really wasn't very important to them, although it was probably important to these guys since their lives are on the line. So we'll send our least useful hero around, and that is Triton, because Triton and the Inhumans and the Fantastic Four had been working a lot with each other. He sees that Namor is unconscious, but he's still alive. Triton is trying to flex his muscles here, and this is the problem when a fish man tries to flex his muscles, in that nobody takes him seriously. So Triton here, he thinks he's acting like a complete badass, speaking for the Inhumans, telling off these soldiers about how lucky they are that he doesn't tell the Inhumans just to start kicking your asses. And this is the guy that Reed Richards had sent to give them help. Triton is all full of himself. For a guy who smells like a fish and has green scales, he has a very high opinion of himself. Triton, he's basically swinging at air at this point, but he thinks he's the world champ. He flies off. The oil workers are just not impressed. They're just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Sure thing, fish guy. When I get home to my wife, I'm going to ask her to serve some trout for dinner in your honor. So the sailors are wondering why Reed Richards sent that clown to them, who had that big attitude, but stunk like a fish. So the oil guys, they immediately regret contacting the Fantastic Four. Then we see Triton. Triton is he's looking over Namor. Namor is unconscious. He's seemingly barely alive at this point. Now Triton doesn't know what happened to Namor, but he's assuming that it had some involvement with the American military, and the American military is wrong at this point. Triton is sort of operating under that assumption. But nevertheless, he's going to take him to the Fantastic Four's headquarters to see what he can do. See what Reed Richards can do. So then we go back to Atlantis. Atlantis looks like Berlin in 1945 at this point. There are some people who look dead. There are others who are just beaten. And it turns out that it was Orca and the She-Beast. They had taken control of the city. So these two, in the previous issue, had started working together to sort of dominate Atlantis. So these two are kind of riding an Orca and letting it be known that they're running things now. And the people of Atlantis are just like, they're just befuddled at this point. Now, as Orca is speaking, it turned out that the nerve gas that Namor had released earlier when he rammed into the ship is now suddenly raining on Atlantis. So as Orca is giving his victory speech, this nerve gas is just covering the city. And it turns out that the Atlanteans are being affected, and it also turns out that Orca and the She-Beast are also being infected by this. They're being affected by this, excuse me. And the only individual who's not being affected by the nerve gas is Tamara. Tamara is a water-based being who came from another planet, and she kind of befriended Namor. I actually enjoyed her character. And she's just looking around. She doesn't understand what's going on because everyone else is being knocked out unconscious except for her. Then we turn to the Baxter Building, and then we see the Fantastic Four, kind of as they were constituted at that point. Reed Richards, Ben Grimm, Johnny Storm, Medusa in place of the Invisible Girl. And we also see Maddie Wyatt, who's a college friend of Johnny. He was sort of the civilian. I guess he was the auxiliary member of the Fantastic Four. He was the civilian that would help out every so often in missions. And it turns out the Fantastic Four, there's some type of drama going on in the living room. However, you have to read Fantastic Four issue number 140 to know what it is. So, I guess the kids who are buying Namor but weren't buying the Fantastic Four, I guess this is sort of a way to kind of push them into maybe spending that 20 cents on that title. So anyway, it looks like Reed wants to go after Sue, and Medusa's saying, "Listen, don't be a stalker. Just stay here." It turns out that Johnny and Ben are kind of having words too, because obviously this affects the entire team. Sue leaving. However, the alarm rings and then immediately takes precedent over this fight because they think they have an intruder on their hands. However, they check their video screen and it turns out to be Triton. It turns out Triton wasn't as familiar with the Fantastic Four's security system as they had hoped. So he kind of accidentally tripped the alarm. Then we see Triton kind of taking Namor in at this point. The Fantastic Four, they don't really know what's going on. They see Namor, unconscious and helpless. It looks like the last time any of the team encountered Namor, it was the Human Torch in issue number 46 of the Submariner. So they sort of they're not really been keeping in contact with Namor too much. Reed is talking to Triton saying, "Listen, I'm not a doctor and I kind of don't really like this guy. So if he does kick the bucket, I'm not really going to care that much. Not sure why you sent him to me." And Triton is saying, "Listen, maybe you can try being a decent human being and helping a being in need here." However, Reed kind of gets the message. So he kind of examines Namor to see what's going on. And he sees that Namor, his cellular structure is actually breaking down at this point. So the nerve gas did have a deep effect on him. The art here by Don Heck is better than usual Don Heck, although it's still not that great. So anyway, Reed has an idea that he might be able to save Namor, but he'll need some materials first. So he makes a list for Johnny. Johnny, who's in his red outfit, not blue one. He takes off and he goes after the materials that Reed needs. So then, this is kind of a strange thing with the creative team and the direction. We go to a place called Zephron Land, and I'm not going to break down what's going on, and I'll explain that why, but basically, these people are in this comic because of the She-Beast. So the She-Beast comes from this universe. And this, I think, was something that Bill Everett had some ideas about. And I think the new creative team wanted to get rid of this. So this is sort of like they dedicated 2 pages to Zephron Land. But the next issue, I think they only dedicated 1. So they're kind of going to drop that storyline. So anyway, we'll go back to Namor. He's in water. He's conscious now. It turns out he's in a tank in the Baxter building. Namor thinks he's being held captive here, like he's being caged. However, Reed Richards is telling him that's not the case. And basically he's giving him a rundown that, hey, it was Triton who brought you here, and you were in really bad shape, and I was checking you out. And basically, Reed is telling Namor that because of the cellular damage done to Namor because of the nerve gas, he no longer has really the ability to be on land anymore. that his need for water is so great that even if he's out of water for a couple of minutes, that in and of itself will kill him. Namor is very angry about this. He's kind of used to going from the sea to the surface without any problems. So now Namor has a problem now. Okay, so before I get back to the story, I'm going to take a look at the letters page. And the letters page actually doesn't have any letters. And it's basically a rundown on what Marvel is planning on doing with the Submariner. And they give an explanation of what had been going on with the title and some of the changes. Basically what happened was that Bill Everett was sort of given complete reign of the title, and he was the main guy in charge. I'm sure Roy Thomas was thrilled about this because of all the work he had to do, that was like one less title for him to worry about. So Bill Everett was really the driving force of what was going on in the Submariner title. The problem was, I think Bill Everett had developed cancer at this time. I'm not sure what it was. It might have been lung cancer, it might have been liver cancer. I know, based on histories, Bill Everett did have kind of a serious drinking problem. So Bill Everett, he's trying to fight cancer, using 1972, 1973 medical technology, which is not an easy thing to do. But he was still in charge of the direction of the comic. And Bill had certain ideas, but the thing is that as he got sicker and sicker, he was able to handle fewer and fewer duties. So basically, Bill was the guy who was sort of overseeing the direction of the comic, but Marvel had other guys actually doing the writing for him. And it turns out Roy Thomas had said that this was actually even that was a little too much for Bill at that point, because apparently his physical health had really deteriorated. And Roy Thomas is mentioning how sometimes they would have to cut corners and edit the news stories into kind of shorter stories, and then they would have a reprint at the end. So Marvel was able to do this for a while, and then eventually Bill got so sick that he actually stopped working on the title altogether. This obviously kind of created problems for Marvel if the guy who's in charge of the creative direction isn't actually creating anymore. So then what happened is that Roy Thomas took control of the title over from Bill Everett. And the thing is that the then creative team, which is Steve Gerber, didn't really know exactly where Bill was going with some of his ideas. So he decided to basically, listen, we're just going to junk this stuff right here and now. And we already saw some of that stuff happening. The arc with Orca and the She-Beast, that was turned off. They had that quick little, the nerve gas took care of them. And then we have Zephyrin Land, which looks like it's coming to a conclusion. So some of the stuff that Bill Everett was working on that Steve Gerber didn't like, Gerber is just getting rid of it. So this sort of explains the quick change of direction in the title. Okay, and we see down here, there's an in-house ad for supernatural thrillers. The Headless Horseman rides again. This cover by Gil Kane is amazing looking. I know the interior is nowhere near as wonderful as this art for the cover is. So then, going back to the story, Namor, he doesn't believe what Reed Richards has to say, that his molecular structure had changed, and that he basically won't be able to breathe air anymore. Reed Richards is trying to assure him, listen, we're being honest with you, and you need to stay in here until I can think of something that will help you. Namor isn't listening, so he immediately breaks out of the tank. And we see immediately Matty Wing, what is it, Wyatt Wingfoot? I forgot his name. He's immediately taken out of the action because he's hit by a piece of concrete in the head. The Human Torch is wet at this point, so his effectiveness against Namor is kind of limited. And we see Reed Richards, he's trying to go into action, but his power set is just simply no match for the Submariner. Can handle the Submariner is Ben Grimm, the Thing. He declares that it's clobbering time. He tries to go after the Submariner. Submariner is still smaller and more flexible than Ben Grimm, so the Thing is taken out pretty easily at this point. So we basically have an unconscious Reed. We have Medusa, who is attempting to nurse Reed because Reed is unconscious at this point. The Human Torch is still wet, so he can't really flame on properly. So at this point, Ben has to carry the battle. He immediately goes on the offense against Namor. It looks like he's doing well initially. However, again, Namor just came out of the water, so he's at peak power at this point. So he's actually making the Thing look bad here. Then we cut to, like I said, there's a lot going on here. We cut to the campus of Empire State University, which I think is the Marvel analog to NYU, which is where Peter Parker is taking grad courses, or he's still in college. So anyway, we see one of the working scientists at the university. He's in the lab with his lab assistant, and they're working on a force field. And the two are impressed with the progress that's going on. However, it turns out that the assistant, who I think kind of bears a little bit of a resemblance to Jim Shooter, they also emphasize he's kind of a tall guy too. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe Steve Gerber was having some fun with Jim Shooter by making him this, kind of power-hungry grad student. And he makes ominous messages to the professor that he's kind of going to take over this thing. So the grad student turns the force field on the professor here. And the grad student saying, listen, this device is really great, and whoever has control of it will be invincible, and wouldn't it be great if I did it? So yeah, he does come back. So I'm kind of thinking this guy's an analog for Jim Shooter. So anyway, we go back to the Baxter building, the Thing and Namor. They're kind of slugging it out at this point. The Thing thinks he has the upper hand, and Namor is letting the Thing think this. The Thing is quite proud of himself. It looks like he knocked Namor unconscious. However, it turns out Namor was just sort of playing possum there, and he kind of goes on the offense, and he starts to attack the Thing. The Thing is kind of taken by surprise here because he was a little too overconfident, and Namor throws the Thing into kind of an electrical closet here, and he kind of zaps the Thing. So right now, it really looks like Namor has control of the situation here. I also should say the art by Don Heck is not that great, but it's not that terrible either. So now it looks like the Human Torch, he has dried up enough where he can use his flames effectively. Before I go back to the story, I'm going to take a look at the Marvel bullpen bulletins. Okay, the first item is basically on their magazine line. They had started a magazine line because Marvel wanted they wanted more expensive products on the newsstand, which obviously would help their bottom line. And I think the Marvel imprint was Curtis. And the second item is talking about the Hands of Kung Fu, on how they licensed that property, and they're going to be coming out with that comic soon. The third item is about the Avengers Defenders War, because at that time those issues were out on the newsstand, and boy, that was a fun ride. And they're talking about Call the Conqueror, Mike Plug, and they're also talking about the Submariner, how it's going through a major makeover in terms of the creative direction. And then here's the Mighty Marvel checklist. These are some of the comics that were out at the time. Fantastic Four 140, that was referenced in this issue. That had Annihilus, but he was only in there for that one issue. For an enemy like Annihilus, I want more than a done-in-one comic. Spider-Man was up to issue number 126. This was the Kangaroo. Kangaroo, not a bright point in Jerry Conway's run on Spider-Man. And Gwen Stacy was dead at this point for a couple of months. Thor number 217. I never read much Thor's because I hated Asgard. Hulk was up to issue number 169. That was the Herb Trimpe era. I love those Hulks. Avengers 117. That was Avengers Defenders War. That's the Vision versus the Silver Surfer. That was a good issue. Tomb of Dracula 14 was out. Hero for Hire 15. Captain America and Falcon 167. Those were decent comics. Daredevil 105. These were one of the few Daredevils I did enjoy. Conan the Barbarian was up to issue number 32. I do remember buying that one off the newsstand. Submariner 67. Iron Man 64. Yeah, Ghost Rider 3. Okay, yeah, I'm not really saying anything about the comics. And then here's an ad for Voom. I remember my older cousin had a membership to this, and it was really fun because I was there when he was opening up the package, and he was showing off the poster and all the stickers he got. It was actually quite a lot. And we see another ad. I think this is an in-house ad, maybe, where you can get these medallions of Spider-Man. I don't think anyone went to the club wearing a Spider-Man medallion, expecting to get anything. Okay, so anyway, going back to the fight, the Torch is throwing fireballs at Namor at this point. The two are talking. The two had an adventure fairly recently, probably less than 2 years earlier, in real time. So the two are talking, and the Torch is bringing up the fact that Namor is starting to slow down. He's breathing heavily. He's not moving as quickly. And basically he's saying, come on, we're being honest with you here. You can see the physical effects that are happening to you. And you have to admit, yeah, you're failing at this point. So the Human Torch, he envelops Namor in this ring of fire. This obviously dehydrates Namor to the point where he really can't fight anymore, and now he's struggling to breathe. So now he's really starting to feel that maybe Reed Richards was right. He is actually crying uncle here, where he's yelling at the Torch to stop at this point. So Namor's indicating that he kind of gets the message here. So then the Fantastic Four, they have to decide what to do with Namor, because Namor obviously is a dangerous individual to them, because he handled them pretty easily at one point. Ben is like on the do not resuscitate list. So Ben is taking the side that, listen, we should not resuscitate this guy, and he's just going to cause us problems. However, Reed is saying, listen, Namor is not really evil per se. He doesn't really have any evil designs, but he is striking out from a different point of view than us humans. And Reed feels that Namor is a being that deserves to live. and he's doing what's right from his point of view and his code of honor. The Thing is kind of angry because he knows Reed's right. So then Reed takes a closer look at what could be done. He comes up with the idea that he can create a suit that would retain water long enough for the Submariner to operate on the surface for a respectable amount of time. I think it was designated 1 hour. So kind of the tubing of this kind of disco outfit that Namor was given. This is kind of definitely a more formal costume than the green swimming trunks. So we see as Reed is preparing the suit, they need to keep Namor alive, so they basically just take him in the tub and keep him in some cold water. So finally, they're working to kind of graft the suit on Namor, because they're not grafting it to his skin, but nevertheless they sort of have to kind of prepare. They have to armor him up, so to speak. So they noticed that Namor has recovered consciousness, so they know the suit's working. We see that the Thing kind of he still wants to pursue this fight. However, the fight's over in terms of from Namor's point of view. He thanks Reed Richards, saying that he feels bad for doubting him and his truthfulness. He says, "Listen, I still have problems with you guys collectively as a race, but individually, I kind of like you guys." So then he kind of leaves on kind of somewhat good terms with the Fantastic Four. Still hates humans, but he kind of likes them. And the Fantastic Four is wondering whether they made the right decision or not. Because, if things go the wrong way, Namor is able to make life for the human race very bad. And Reed would be the guy kind of responsible for that. So they're kind of putting their trust into Namor here. And then they're telling us that Namorita, a character I liked, that she's coming back along with Tamara, who, again, I liked her, and a man called Force. And that was the power-hungry grad student that apparently was an analog for Jim Shooter. So, so that's it. And that is my review of the Savage Submariner, issue number 67. And I hope to have more reviews up soon.